Good evening. So it seems as though something has led you to the campsite of the Orator. Well, as you can see, I've stoked the fire, which means it's time for you to pull up your chair and settle in, because tonight, I have another tale to tell. When a young boy returns to his home village in northern India with his parents, the village has one simple rule: never go outside after 8 p.m. But when the boy wakes up in the middle of the night with an urgent call of nature, and he does ignore that warning and go outside, he sees something in a banyan tree. And this thing he sees is so dark and so evil that by the time it's through with him, the village needs an ancient cleansing ritual just to save this boy's life. But before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do shorts almost every single day, and then I do longer videos like this Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, as I mentioned, all my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Today's story comes from us from Redditor Razgula Rogue, and I will make sure to link his original story below. But if you or anybody you know has a story and you think that it would fit well on my channel, reach out to me on any of my social media and we will find a time to get together, collect your story, and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's tale. It is a story that I call Jihad Funk. Young Ramesh is only 6 years old, and his father is in the Indian Air Force. And so that means they travel a lot within India, but also it means that he lives most of his life, little Ramesh, on Indian Air Force bases, places with a ton of structure, and he's either in the buildings there or around the facility, and so everything in his life is relatively structured and put together. And then one day, Ramesh's father tells Ramesh and his family that they're going to go home to their village. They have not been there in quite a while. Now, they live in the village, this tiny little village in northern India in the state of Uttarakhand. And this village, it's set in northern India within the Himalayan mountains, and this is a very old, very rustic village. We're talking very few modern amenities. And so, Ramesh and his father and mom, they all go back to this village and visit. And it's pretty exciting to be able to go back to where he grew up and see some of his old friends. And, his mom and dad, they're excited to be home. And so they're hanging out in the village throughout the day. And then as it gets closer to night, everybody in the entire village turns in. And Ramesh finds out that there is a rule in this village that no one is ever allowed to go outside after 8 p.m. And Ramesh, he thinks it's pretty weird. You know what I mean? It's not like it's that late, but the entire village turns in, and so he doesn't really question it too much. He thinks it's just a little bit odd, but he continues to kind of do what everybody else in the village is doing. So they go inside, and he's kind of hanging out inside like everybody else is, and then he suddenly gets this call of nature. He needs to use the bathroom. The problem is, in this rural village, the bathrooms are actually outside of the house a little ways. So you actually have to exit the house and then walk over to almost kind of like an outhouse is sort of how the situation is. And Ramesh, he knows he's been warned not to go out after 8 p.m., but he's used to living on these military bases where he kind of takes care of himself and does everything on his own. Certainly he can go to the bathroom by himself, and so he doesn't even announce it to anybody. He just thinks, I'm going to pop out, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick, and then come back in, and it's not going to be a big deal at all. And so he does that. He steps outside, he starts to head towards the bathroom, and as he's walking towards the bathroom, he's noticing that there's something wrong outside. He's been outside all day during the day, and now that he's stepped out at night, something just seems different. And he's trying to figure out what it is. What is it that feels so strange that he wasn't feeling earlier? And it's starting to kind of set in piece by piece. The air just feels really heavy in a way it didn't before, thick and just kind of hard to breathe almost. And then he's also noticing that there aren't any sounds outside. Like, They're in a pretty rich, dense area with a lot of insects and animals, things like that. And they're surrounded by grass and woods. And so there should be a ton of wildlife noise outside right now. And there's none. It's dead silent. And so there's this thick air and there's this total silence. And it's just really strange. But he's come out here to use the restroom. And so even though the night is obviously very strange, he continues on his trek to the outhouse. But then off to his right, he sees this banyan tree. Now, he's seen it earlier today. It's this big, beautiful tree. It's very curvy, and then the branches and the leaves hang down in these long curtains. This is a pretty cool-looking tree, but the reason that he's looking at it is not because of the uniqueness of this tree or how old it is. It's because he sees his mom sitting on this tree. Now, he doesn't remember her coming outside, and it wouldn't really make sense for her to be sitting there, but it's a pretty clear night, and there's nothing obstructing his view, and there's his mom sitting there. She's sitting there in her, the outfit she was wearing. She's got her long hair is sitting there, flowing over her attire, but he sees her face clearly, and it's his mom. And so he just says, "Mom, what are you doing out here?" And he waits for a response. And she's not saying anything. She's just sitting there staring at him on this tree. And so, Ramesh, he's very confused. And so he starts to take a couple steps towards his mom. He's like, "Mom, are you okay? Mom, what are you doing out here?" And again, totally silent. She's just staring at him. And so Ramesh, it's his mom. He's concerned about her. He starts advancing to go up to her and help her. Suddenly, the door bursts open. And Ramesh's cousin comes out. Says, "Ramesh, what are you doing out here? You're not supposed to be out after 8 p.m. And Ramesh says, "Well, I came up to go to the bathroom, and then I saw my mom." And he turns back to show his mom on the banyan tree to his cousin, and she's gone. There's nothing there at all. And around this banyan tree is a lot of open space. It's not like she jumped off and ran away. They're right there. They would have heard her. They would have seen her. She's gone, disappeared. And so Ramesh's cousin says, "Get inside right now." And so Ramesh, he reluctantly gets inside, and he goes in, and they lock the door, and he says, "You are not supposed to go out after 8 o'clock. Whatever that thing was, it was not your mom. Now stay inside and go to bed." And so Ramesh, he does. He goes back into his room, and he eventually falls asleep. But starting that night, every single night that Ramesh would go to bed, outside of his window, he would start to hear what sounded exactly like his mom's voice calling to him.
"Please come outside. Mommy needs you. Mommy needs your help. Please come outside."
And she would beg for him to come outside. But Ramesh remembers thinking something was off about her voice. I mean, it sounded just like his mom, but it had none of the warmth, none of the love or compassion that she had when she spoke to him. It was her tone, her cadence, the sound of it, the pitch, everything was there except for that spark, that soul that made him know it was his mom. And so even though this voice kept beckoning to him, he just ignored it and was terrified and would hide under the covers. But shortly thereafter, Ramesh started to get sick. Over the days, he stopped eating, and he got a fever, and he was becoming delirious and delusional, and they did not know what to do. Everybody was getting worried, thinking, did he develop some kind of sickness, or what? How are we going to help him, and should we take him to the doctor? And so they're questioning Ramesh about, did you eat something weird? Did you go somewhere weird? Trying to figure out what it could have caused these symptoms. And it's at this moment that Ramesh breaks and tells the story of what he saw outside. And amongst the crowd that he's talking to is Ramesh's grandma. And you can see as he's telling the story, her face go pale. And she's just stricken with terror. And she says, "Ramesh, whatever you saw out there, that was not your mom. And now at least we know what to do." And so Ramesh's grandma, she calls over the local priest, basically. And he comes in, and they perform what is called the Jihad Funk. The Jihad Funk is an ancient cleansing ritual that's meant to basically eliminate, expel, keep away evil entities. It could be demonic or maybe a jinn, something like that. Anything that's like an evil presence that's trying to do harm, it's meant to banish and keep at bay that evil. It's almost like an exorcism, except it's more expansive. It's meant to include anything that is kind of like evil or negative energy. And so Ramesh remembers doing this jihad funk. He sits down on this mat, and he's dressed in specific clothes, and they burn incense, and they were pouring holy water, sprinkling holy water over him as they chanted. And for hours, they continued to do this, praying and chanting over Ramesh, making sure they expelled this evil out of him. And that night, for the first night in over a week, Ramesh finally slept through the night. There was nothing outside calling for him. His fever dissipated. And after that, he was finally okay again. And soon thereafter, they left the village, and he went back to his life on the Air Force bases. And now Ramesh is, he's an adult, and he's looking back on this time in his life, and he still doesn't know how much of the supernatural and spiritual he believes in, but he just knows that, his condition was worsening. The fevers, the delusions, they did not know what to do. And he swears, even now, all these years later, that his life was saved by this spiritual ritual, this jihad funk. And so that's going to do it for today's story. If you found yourself enjoying this story or any of the stories on my channel, firsthand, true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your play and chat to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do shorts every single day, and then I do longer videos like this Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, of course, as I stated, all my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you're anybody has a story and you think that it would fit well on my channel, just reach out to me on any of my social media, and we'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And so until next time, where you may pull up your chair and settle in, my fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell. Bye.